Well, it's true nothing is won before New Year's Day, but for Leinster, it's also true nothing was lost either. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me this week is someone earning cap number 62. Welcome back to Mr. Connor Cronin.
62, the numbers are clocking up quick.
Yeah, indeed. And it's not often we have someone on the Rat Pod who also did the preview. In fact, I think it was Connor who was the last to do it. Anyway, this time it's the owner-operator of the great blog, Post to Post Sport, here for podcast number 28 and closing in on 200 overall Harpin contributions over the years. Hello again to Mr. Kieran Duffy.
Yeah, it's like the old World Cup system where tier two nations would have to play a game 3 days apart or something. I'm worn out now, but I'm going to give it my all. 194 contributions. So I'm a veteran of harping on rugby at this stage.
But who's counting?
Yeah, I have a Word document here.
Indeed. Okay, listen, let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Munster v Leinster in round 9 of the 24-25 BKT United Rugby Championship. It was played at Thomond Park on Friday, December 27th. Now, Connor is going to take us through the first half, but he was actually there. So maybe you can start by giving us a sense of the atmosphere and the conditions and whatnot.
Yeah, conditions-wise, it was actually really nice. It's been very mild for December, and Limerick was no different. The breeze was not particularly present. Any gust was filling what was an otherwise still night. Like it was genuinely flat calm there, with the exception of an occasional gust that was only moving the smaller of the flags. As someone who does a lot of sailing, I measure my wind speed based on what does a flag do. So really, there wasn't a lot there. Atmosphere-wise, look, for the big occasion, they were making every effort to build it. You know, they've got a brass band in beforehand and a live on pitch interview with Jack O'Donoghue as well before they brought up a very talented singer to sing "Stand Up and Fight." The crowd, I think the crowd were nervous. You could sort of feel a sense of it's a big occasion and we don't know what's going to happen here. And I think that was there for all sides. You know, I was a bit nervous as well. You don't know going down there how they're going to perform because it's their home ground. It's the passion that brings out in them. So I think there was a sense of nervousness for everyone, and you could really feel it because in the first first 5 minutes, I bought myself a set of loop earplugs for Christmas. Other earplugs are available, but I put them in and then realized I didn't really need them because it was silent. It was absolutely quiet. Nobody knew how to take what was going on and what was happening. From a rugby point of view, we had the kickoff and then a fairly easy first exit for them. But we had something this week we didn't have last week, and that was a functioning line out. Our first line out actually worked, and I was delighted because, you know, after all the hassle there was last week, I genuinely had concern. We also gave away the first penalty for what the referee called as no clear release, and probably should have called for hands on the floor before Robbie Henshaw tried to play the ball. And for me, if anyone wants to look back on the match and be critical of the ref, and I don't think none of us ever want that. I think his interpretation of the ruck will be the thing that, for me, having rewatched it today, that's the one thing where I would have looked and said, his assessor, that's probably what he's going to look at. If he's being assessed for that match, he's going to look at how he's called the ruck and what he's allowed to happen in the ruck throughout the game. But look, I say we get done for no clear release, and they go down into the corner. But they knock it on in the line out, and it's handy enough for us to clear. Off that line out, Burns kicks it dead. He wanted to kick it down the middle a lot during the match, and every time he kicked it down the middle, I could see it's that sense of we'd a man left, we'd a man right, and then there's space in the middle. But that's space that's very quickly closed up. And especially if your chasers aren't clued in properly and hunting down the man who's got it now. We'll get to the one that they actually did that for in a couple of minutes, but they weren't chasing it. And when that first one went dead, I think the person to my right suggested that they never wanted Billy Burns in the first place. And the person to his right said, "You're dead right, he's shit." And, I know there's all the talk going on online of, oh, the IRFU forced Jack Crowley to miss this game and blah, blah, blah. No, the IRFU said Jack Crowley can play this game or that game. And Munster made a choice. Or the player made a choice, but somebody made a choice and it wasn't the IRFU. So let's just dispel that rumor pretty quick. But look, off that we get the first line, the first scrum. The ref calls that both front rows pop up. I'm not entirely certain of that. I think one pops up and drags the other with it. I don't think the ref had a huge idea what was going on in the scrum all day. I know certainly from watching back the first half, I don't think there's any clean scrum where the referee couldn't have said anything, or there are ones where he definitely chose to say nothing, but he definitely could have said something. But look, it's stable the second time, and there's an absolutely cracking break from Osborne off the back of a ruck where McGrath passes it to him, and it's instantly back to McGrath in support. It's something we've seen Gibson Park do a lot, and I know some people have been very critical of Luke McGrath and the fact that he's not got the pace that Gibson Park does. But I think I will say that maybe it was a touch slower at the ruck, but his desire to be inventive and creative, his want to go looking for space, to run good support lines, it was very evident on Friday night. So hats off to him. He played a good game. Look, he's got off the next phase. We butcher a 3-on-2. Robbie's drawn the defender, but as he throws the worst of forward passes. It was right in front of me. And the minute the ball went in, you have Munster fans going, "Ah!" and shouting and roaring. It's like, it's all right. Everyone knows that was forward. The people all the way down the other end of the pitch looking up at that can see how forward that was. So, we're back in for another scrum, where again, we have both front rows pop up, and then we have Jack Boyle driving Ollie Jaeger back really, really well. Like, I think I was surprised, and I'll talk about it more when he does actually come off. I was surprised he was only on for 20 minutes because he was doing such a good job. And look, we end up with the penalty off that. It goes into the corner. It's quick ball to 2, and then 3 phases before all defenders go running the wrong way, leaving an absolute barn door for Jack McGrath with no pillar. Watching it back, and it just seems like they're all running right, and he's just watching them go. It's and goes, and it almost happens in slow motion, and suddenly he's there and over the line, and in a really good spot for Sam Prendergast to kick the conversion, and all of a sudden we're 7-0. Look, after the restart, we kick it out. They get the line out and they kick through, and under pressure they get a line out on our 22. But we're so aggressive. Again, watching this back, and you can see at the time we were so aggressive in our line speed, so aggressive in our tackles. Watching them just going further and further back, it's so. To be honest, as a Leinster fan, it's enjoyable to watch them lose a metre every couple of carries rather than gain a metre every couple of carries. Really reassuring. And so eventually they resort to a little chip over the defence where Coombs was waiting out in the wing. I think at that stage they had drawn in enough defenders that it was a little bit worrying. But then suddenly you've got Tommy O'Brien coming across, and Coombs, who, without being funny, like, there's all the talk of how good he is, and he is incredibly good from 2 or 3 meters out, and suddenly he's 8 meters out, and he can't get past Tommy O'Brien, who drags him down. And forces a bad pass. But we go back for a penalty because we've infringed. We're called as having been offside a little bit before that, and they've got penalty advantage. They try and set a maul off the line out. The maul defense for that one particular was excellent because it was a moment of wait for the players to get down and then engage from what looked like three sides. It looks like you've got a moment like Wakely hits the ground and then you've got fellas coming straight on, but you've got players coming in at the sides as well. And it's not offside and it's not in from the side because the maul hasn't formed yet. So it's all legal. And then the Munster fellas seeing what's going on, try to bring it to ground, and we turn it over for another scrum for us, where yet again the front rows go up, and you kind of have to wonder what's going wrong when you've had three scrums and all three of them have had to be reset first attempt. We tried to use the width off that particular scrum, didn't go as maybe Jimmy O'Brien would have wanted, as he gets just nudged into touch as he's trying to find a way to get an offload. Again, they go when they off the line out, they go trying for another chip and chase, which all goes really messy. Like looking at that, it was, I didn't know who had the ball or why. And being in the stadium, I hadn't a clue what had gone on. It's just like, oh great, we have the ball, fantastic. And even watching back, I was like, he's called, that's backwards off someone. I think that one's off someone's head. That one's come off a knee, maybe. It's just kind of ricocheting around like a pinball machine for a minute. Before we've got the ball. Sam off this the next couple of phases tries for a 50-22 that again in the stand, and I'm watching it going, just get out, just one more bounce, and it just wouldn't get that extra. It wouldn't bounce on the right end of the ball, so it sat up pretty nicely for Haley. And the kick battle that happens next, they definitely win that. You know, they go from inside their own 22 to just inside our 22, because with the bit of back and forth, and eventually it gets down to Prendergast, who really nicely steps Ahern. But it's the one time where their chip and chase actually had the follow through it needed. So there were a couple of players there ready to get over the ball if given a chance. Again, if hands in the ruck or if hands on the floor is a thing you're looking at, you throw questions, but look, they had the chase there, and I think you give a team the benefit of the doubt in that situation. You absolutely give them the penalty, and that penalty led to a pretty sustained period of Munster pressure. I had a couple of people around me who were looking, saying, "Oh, it's 20 minutes in. Do you go for the points or do you go for the corner?" And I said at the time, you go for the corner because it's only 7-0 and it's only 20 minutes in. So you go for the corner, you back your pack to do something. I think that off that first line out, just the pressure we're putting them under, they couldn't get it set properly. So when they go for phases and we get called for offside, and I think that one was the one where Doris is trying really hard to hook the ball back in a bunch of rucks during the course of the match. And this is one where he's judged to have come in from the side because he's part of the formation of the ruck. So as he kind of turns into it, he's now coming sidewards at it rather than through the gate. So ref calls it for that. Munster went for a tap and go before we another offside, and it's this offside that gets us our warning. They tried to chip through and it gets knocked on, and we come back for that advantage. They go for another tap and go, and this time Tommy O'Brien's the one who gets called for offside. The commentary team, as I was listening back to it and doing the rewatch, they didn't have a clue who it was being given to until Tommy O'Brien went running off the pitch. They thought it was Ryan. They thought it might have been Doris, but it's O'Brien who goes, and they go for yet another tap and go. And this time, as they get over the line, they're held up. And Gary Ringrose on the bottom of that, holding Tide Byrne from scoring. Gary Ringrose, who I think just all game put them under so much difficulty. A couple of nice creative moments as well, particularly in the first half, but gave them nothing. Gave them absolutely nothing. They were getting absolutely nowhere trying to go through him at any stage. So yeah, they've spent at this stage, it feels like 6 or 7 minutes down, and I think it was probably 6 or 7 actual minutes as opposed to match minutes. But they've come away with absolutely nothing. To the best efforts of the scoreboard keeper, who painted up that it was suddenly 5-7 and was convinced the try had been scored, and the ref was going to just check it on the TMO. And it sat like that for a couple of minutes as well, that it was 5-7. Look, at that stage, the first of the injuries started to kick in, or at least what I thought was the first of the injuries, because Niall Scannell went off for a HIA, something that worryingly seems to happen to him frequently. And, I hope it's just that whatever way his head is moving with the new mouthguard sensors, it's just maybe it's not fitting right, and maybe that's why they're picking it up so frequently or something. And hopefully it's nothing more extreme than that. And I thought that as Jack Boyle went off, that must be a HIA as well. And then he's sitting there in the dugout, and I'm like, oh God, maybe he's just injured. And then it turns out it's just a little bit of shithousery, where it's a thing of, God, our second choice prop has your boy on skates. Let's see what happens when we bring on the good one. Not to say, sorry, that's probably disrespectful of Jack Boyle, but let's see what happens when we bring on our first choice. Let's see what happens when Andrew Porter steps in for a typical Andrew Porter 60-minute shift. We've dominance with the young fella. Let's see what the experienced head can do. And it's just that
I think a 60-minute shift for Andrew Porter is officially a holiday.
Yeah, like that's at least 15 minutes less than usual. But look, we get a good few phases off the goal line dropout before, again, the pressure of our defense forces a knock on, and we get another scrum, which leads to another penalty. At this stage, we're less than 30 minutes into the game, and I think every penalty Munster have given away at this stage is in the scrum. And again, we've had no clean scrums. And even some of the ones where the ball gets away, you hear the ref going, well, the ball was available to be used, so I just called use it. So it's a worrying thing for Munster at that stage, if you're looking at your scrum going backwards that often. Look, at that stage, we get the line-outs and phases. Prendergast goes for an up and under, which unfortunately we knock on, and then as they look to clear it, we got the possession, and we'd a lot of carriers over the next couple of minutes. There was some real desire for players who just wanted to take the ball and go running at defenders, for a couple of minutes, before eventually, look, we weren't making the ground we wanted. So Sam kicked it into the corner for for their line out, but their line out at 5 meters. So when they went up for it, and as the ball came down from Byrne to Coughlin, it just didn't come clean to him. And he was sort of on the back foot as he took the ball from that line out. So as our players went steaming through to hit him, they drove him over the line, and it's called held up over the line, therefore carried back. And so it's a scrum 5 for us, which is reset as, again, there's the suggestion that both Porter and Jaeger were trying to milk each other for a penalty. So neither of them was getting the benefit of that call. You can sort of see, like, Jaeger's going, okay, if I just lean a little bit, he collapses down. But at the same time, you've got Porter looking to pressure on and driving one way or another, and the room isn't there because they're not quite engaged properly. So in fairness, it's the one reset call that I looked at and I said, that's actually a fair call. It's the right decision to reset that from the off. Look, we go for when eventually on the second attempt we get an advantage and a penalty. We went for the quick tap. It was 5 or 6 phases where, again, I'm going to say hands on the ruck, watching it back, and when you're seeing replays and you can actually rewind a little bit. So yeah, there's tacklers' hands all over the ball. There's illegal jacklers' hands all over the ball. So it's quite slow. But eventually the pass comes out to Sam, and it's, again, the defense is caught napping a little bit because there's this big wide open space, where Shane Daly's looking and going, okay, he's going to pass it now. And holding the ball as if he's got the thought in his head to pass, but the space is just so wide, he saunters through. He doesn't even have to go running fast. I know there are people who think he can't run, but he was quick enough to get past Daly trying to turn back, and he was quick enough to get past Farrell and get over. And I say, kind of strolled through this big, massive gap for a try, which he converts himself. And in this time, we've had Tommy O'Brien off the whole time. We've been the team down to 14 men, but we're the team suddenly another 7 points up, and it's 14-0 with sort of 33 minutes gone at this stage. I don't think there's a huge amount in what's left of the half. We get a line out that we steal a line out that we managed to back down onto our side, but then when we lose possession and they go for phases, but we're driving them back, and we get a point where we drive them back from being inside our half to being at their own 22. It was a huge amount of pressure driving them back, and some of it is just that thing of, oh God, there's a fella running at me, I better pass this quick, because we've got some numbers there, but the passes then are having to be a little bit too deep, and fellas aren't taking them because they're not clean passes. And look, we get called at that point for hands on the ground, but Scannell trying to get as much distance as he can on the ball, absolutely misses touch, and we get from our own 22 to nearly theirs with another kick that we put into touch. We steal the line out, and even though it's messy, we get caught out for a penalty because McGrath knocks it on and then tries to play it while he's on the floor. But technically, I think the ref is calling him for being offside for his own knock on or something. I wasn't quite sure what the call was, but either way, it was 100% their penalty for it. And look, from there, the most exciting thing to happen is that when we eventually get the ball back, we tried for a big up and under that unfortunately got knocked on, and then they knocked it on again, and so the ref blew it up for half time.
Yeah, there was a lot of points from that half. I mean, it was interesting to see what Munster's plan seemed to be. I mean, at this stage, you're going against Leinster, you're going against this defense, this shooting defense, and obviously their plan was to kick early in the phases, try to get past it, which is all well and good, but you need the right kind of kicks, I think. And I wasn't convinced that they were doing, sometimes you dig over the top, sometimes you go for distance, you go for territory, Bob. And I just got the sense that they were kicking almost for the sake of it. There didn't seem to be a lot of thought going into what they were doing, and it wasn't really.
As I mentioned, the one time they had the chasers right, it paid off for them.
Yeah.
And I think that was a combination of where they kicked it to and having the chaser. So it was going down towards the corner. And when you've got it going towards the corner and you've got three men coming down to that space, that's brilliant. If you're kicking it down the middle of the field and you're just hoping that an awkward bounce will buy you some time because players aren't chasing as they should be. And especially after the first try, and you can see it, a couple of heads are down after the first try, and definitely after the second try, there's a couple of heads down a little bit in that last couple of minutes going into the half-time break. But it did seem a bit aimless.
Yeah, and then from Leinster's point of view, of course, we've been saying it the last couple of weeks, just the lineouts. I mean, we'd get ourselves into positions, but you have to win that lineout. When you win a penalty in midfield, you get into their 22. I mean, you need to secure the ball. And we've been saying, why can't they do more simpler options? Now, they have tried that last week. I think last week they tried one with Gibson Park and a behind-the-back pass, a little bit too intricate. They did a better one this time before the try. I think they just throw it to the guy at the front of the lineout. It ends up back at Kelleher. And but I mean, our lineouts were on point throughout the match anyway. It was Munster who had the problems at both set pieces.
It was like we donated the yips to Scandal.
And then you talk about defense. I mean, at the line, I mean the Red Sea just parted at that ruck, and it was their prop Bleuler who's kind of went missing. I had visions of that meme from Ferris Bueller's Day Off where the teacher's going, Bueller. Yeah. Where is he? Because he seemed like he'd taken a day off. But the scrum half doesn't always spot that. You know what I mean? It's like that. If the scrum half's mindset is like he's setting up phases, he's trying to organize pods and all this kind of stuff. So fair play to Luke. I mean, I know it was a big gap there, but I mean, they don't always spot it, and he went himself. So it was a really good start. That was just after 10 minutes, and then you had our defense just kind of grind them down. I think Nienaber, it's not even the. I think Nienaber has them taking risks, and I mean discipline risks as well. I think he's trying to give this edge. We're giving away more penalties. We're taking more chances. We're risking more cards. But you see what happens when we go down a man. We're still able to defend. We're still able to hold them up over the line. We're still able to get there quickly, and we're still able to manage and get the ball down the other end of the pitch and even score ourselves if that needs be. So it seems it's interesting what he's brought to the team. What did you make of the first half, Kieran?
Yeah, well, I think the sin bin period being managed well was crucial. I do have to say on Luke McGrath, I was critical of him there in the preview podcast. I think like Ross Byrne, he's been a bit maligned in terms of out half options as probably not the one most supporters would go with, and obviously supporters know everything. But in fairness, he was very good. He was much more alert, and I think that's something I've noticed. Luke McGrath and Ross Byrne, when they've been on, they've played with that bit of a chip on. They played with a bit of anger, like, look, don't forget about us, and that's something I'd like to see from Harry Byrne as well when he plays. But yeah, I think we managed the game really well, and we kind of, Munster probably went in at half time thinking, how is that 14-0 to Leinster? In terms of they had a fair bit of the attack and play. I think they started the game reasonably well, and you're thinking if they can take advantage of one of their attacks, and hindsight's great, but maybe when Tommy O'Brien gets yellow carded, maybe they go for 3 points and go back at Leinster, and suddenly it's like, right, we have a score, it's only a 4-point game, and there's a chance to go ahead. But then again, if they had gotten the try, it would have been even better. But holding them up was crucial. I think Sam Prendergast's try was one of those for someone who can't run. He ran very well. It's becoming a bit of a classic Sam Prendergast try at this stage in his young career. But I think managing that sin bin, that went a long way to winning the game ultimately, because if Munster get back into it, if Munster are level or in with a kind of within a score at half time, they're going to be up for the second half. They're going to be getting up for it. They're going to be saying like, right, we're in this game, and suddenly Thomond Park's a big cauldron. The Munster fans backs against the wall. They'll be up for it. But I think we did well just to kill the game. There's been a lot of talk about brilliantly boring Leinster. There was a comparison to the 2019 Saracens team that was successful. I can't remember who they beat in the European Cup, but we don't remember that final. But don't remember the last 4 out of 5 finals. But obviously, look, brilliantly boring. I mean, if you're winning games, I think if we were brilliantly boring in the European Cup final last year, we'd probably be European champions now. So I mean, it's not the professional wrestling where you're putting on a show. It's a competitive sport where you're but you're trying to win a match. So it's great when things can be exciting and fluid, but at the same time, sometimes you're going down to Thomond Park to play Munster away. You have to kill the game a little bit and just win the psychological battle. And I think we did that in the first half. So we were much more clinical as well, because really we had 2 chances and scored from both of them. Last week against Connacht, it seemed knocking on the door for about 40 minutes, and look, we had a lot more chances, just couldn't. But I think managing that sin bin period was really, really crucial as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about brilliantly boring. I mean, nothing says brilliantly boring than winning 3 knockout games by 1 point to win a World Cup, which is which is hopefully a kind of a Nienaber effect that he can bring to Leinster. But anyway, listen, that was the first half. We were on top on set pieces. We scored a couple of tries. We survived the sin bin period, and the score at the break, like we said, was Munster 0, Leinster 14. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere. To get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky this weather, so do follow us there if you can. And please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so Munster got the second half underway, and they definitely needed to get off to a good start, Kieran.
Yeah, and I think so did Leinster, in fairness, because we were so poor in the second half against Connacht, and really Connacht should have won that game probably or gotten something out of it. They were very unlucky if they had played like that against Ulster this weekend, they probably would have gotten something out of their game. But yeah, Munster, you feel like it's that kind of thing. They've worked very hard and haven't gotten a score, so it's that championship minutes we talk about. Those first 10 minutes, you're thinking, right, they need to get a score. Now there were kind of three, probably possibly more, but three refereeing decisions relating to tries, and I think things balanced out in the end. But we don't like talking about refs, but you kind of have to mention them, so we'll get to that. But yeah, Munster, they had their tails up. They tap and go from 5 minutes out. There was an odd one here at about 44 minutes where I can't remember which Leinster player, but someone came off the line early because the Munster player kind of dummied the tap, and the ref had to warn him not to pretend to tap. You have to tap, and I think that's fair enough. I mean, because you're just it's a bit more of that scrum stuff. You're looking for a penalty, but they tap and go. They had an advantage. Now there was a call here. There were a few calls here. I can't remember was it before the try or after the try. I think it was before the try. Tom Ahern got over. He reached over. He actually had a good. He was one of the shining lights for Munster. I thought Tom Ahern, and let's talk about him being in the Ireland squad. I'm all for giving goals for players who are doing well at URC and European level. So I think why not have him in an extended squad, training squad? I think you're probably not going to throw a player in the deep end and start them against England unless you really have to. But I certainly think Six Nations squad, and then maybe over the summer against summer's a big opportunity playing Georgia, Portugal, and Romania. You're going to see a lot of change. But Tom Ahern got over. Now, there was a moment here where I think it was Caelan Doris. He got pinned for coming in from the side, but the ball was out. So the ball's out, and if the ball's out, you can go for the ball. So it's not in from the side. But he was called, and it just seemed that the ref was a bit charitable at that time. But we'll see later it kind of balanced out, and Leinster got a call their way. So sometimes unfortunately I think refs, rather than just making the calls that are correct on the day, they kind of make the calls. Well, I gave them a call, so I have to give these a call. It was a bit of that, but eventually then, so it was 7-14, Munster back in the game, Leinster on the ball, big kick up in the air, not claimed by O'Brien, and Ringrose put in a massive hit, and he had a serious game. I mean, he's been, I felt like last season, and probably during the World Cup and last season, he wasn't as good as he could be, and it seems to be one of those players who's taken that bit personally. We talked about Luke McGrath and Ross Byrne playing with a chip on the shoulder. Now, Ringrose hasn't been bad by any means, but he's the last few weeks, this season really, he's been one of the better Leinster players, and he's been excellent. And I love to see him do that kind of thing defensively, just putting in those big hits. Thankfully, no one was hurt in the process. But Munster were on the ball again, and there was a forward pass in there, so under the scrum Leinster, and again scrums were a little bit messy, and I think at times refs make their mind up about scrums early, but it did seem Leinster had the advantage. Again, Leinster had a scrum here. Doris picked from the back, played it to McGrath. It was good we were trying to use the ball a bit quicker off the scrum, weren't just trying to grind them down. Ball found its way to Osborne, who put in a good pass to O'Brien, but it was knocked on, so a scrum to Munster. Here, Leinster win a penalty off the scrum, and at this stage, Fintan Gunn comes on from Luke McGrath, and Cian Healy comes on for Slimani. While we're giving players that we've been a little bit critical of credit, I think Slimani was very good. I think he did well he did what we got him for. We didn't get him to be a world beater. We got him to be a wily old prop who can win a couple of penalties and kind of just grind through games. I was actually having a chat with Connor at the Leinster Connacht game, the last game in the RDS before its redevelopment, and Connor made the point that we've had a lot of squad players over the years. They're not Ireland internationals. They're not going to be playing in the European Cup semi-final or final, but they play a lot of URC, Pro 14, Pro 12, Rabble the Reft, whatever you want to call the league, the many iterations of the league. They play those kind of games, and they play the games that the big internationals aren't at. And they help us. Obviously, Somali's not an Ireland international; he's non-Ireland qualified. They play those games. They do their job on the day. they help Leinster get wins and oftentimes bonus point wins, and that ultimately helps our standing in the table. I think Slimani, that's what we need him to be, and he's probably going to feature in bigger games as well. But I think when he's starting, we just need him to be wily old clever prop who can win a couple of penalties for us. From there, Leinster have a 5 metre line out, and this is where there's another bit of controversy in terms of a call. So it goes through a few phases before Van der Fleer gets over. Now I think like you can't not mention the fact that I think it was Joe McCarthy was on the deck with the ball, and he did hold on to the ball too long and eventually played it, and it seemed to be the kind of thing that you'd go back for a penalty to Munster ultimately. Now Leinster got over in the end, and we'll see later Leinster were denied a try that probably was a try, so maybe it bounces out. But this was a turning point in the game. I think, look, Leinster were on top anyway and may have gotten a score anyway, but it is the kind of thing you would see refs go back for. It's not something to really let go. Munster fans have a right to feel aggrieved about that. Not the result in the end. I think Leinster were on top for most of the game, but it was it kind of just I can't remember if it was a McCarthy or Ryan, but whoever it was took an age over releasing the ball, and it was we got away with one there, and ultimately Van der Fleer got over. I thought Van der Fleer was excellent again, and like Ringrose, he's kind of the forward version of Ringrose for us. He's just absolutely every game he seems to be immense. So from the restart there, Tyburn knocks it on, so it's scrum Leinster, scrum advantage. Again, there's a lot of scrum penalties advantages. There's no yellow cards. I guess, you don't want to see the ref making, just giving a random player. Like we had that against Bristol Bears. It was kind of random scrum penalty generator. And eventually, I think a player from each side, Leinster and Bristol, got a yellow card for for the same scrum. And you don't want to see that kind of thing. You don't want to see pointless yellow cards. But this was an interesting one because Leinster actually had an advantage here. It was played to Osborne. We came back to the advantage, but it was reversed for a penalty to Munster for a croc roll, which superseded the original advantage. I agree with the decision. I think, look, if there's serious style play, you have to go back, and that's the kind of thing, refs are calling now. But from there, line out from Munster and Leinster half, goes to the front. Again, probably the right thing to do from a Munster point of view because their line out was malfunctioning a bit like ours was last week. A few phases. Burns plays a pass and it's knocked on at the touch, so Leinster choose to scrum from there. We're at the 60-minute mark here, and it feels like the game's just gotten away from Munster at this stage. It seems like, regardless of if it's a one-score game or a two-score game, it seems like it's a mountain to climb for Munster because they seem a bit out of ideas. Leinster chose scrum from there, won a penalty to Leinster, another scrum, and this one's actually won by Munster, so that one went against the grain anyway. Went out wide on the left and back to the right. Farrell kicks the ball on, tries to chase it, goes into touch, and it's a line out to Leinster. Goes to the back this time. I'm glad to see us varying our lineouts. Kick clear by Prendergast. Here's the kick tennis, I think. At this stage, it was kick clear by Prendergast, claimed by Munster. Sorry, this wasn't actually what I was talking about. It was a crossfield kick from Burns to Tom Ahern, who just can't get away. And again, I think Tom Ahern, who was very dangerous in this game, turned over by Kelleher, who's another player who probably hasn't done well enough for us. Really hasn't been good enough since the World Cup. But again, and obviously he had an injury in that time. But again, he's done well here, but unfortunately knocks on into turnover. And it's advantage to Munster. They played through the advantage, so it's advantage over, and Daly's brought into touch. So at this point, we're about 64 minutes in. Ross Byrne comes on for Sam Prendergast, Lee Barron on from Kelleher. I mentioned Lee Barron; it's a big game for him. I think Kelleher did very well, but I was saying if Kelleher didn't do well, then suddenly it's a big opportunity for Lee Barron to impress and maybe jump the queue like Gus McCarty did. I think Ross Byrne did reasonably well when he was on. It was really just about controlling the game. So at this stage, it's a line out to Leinster on halfway with a maul play. It's played out of the maul, and Ross Byrne kicks through, claimed by Munster, kicked by Patterson. O'Brien rises to claim. The ball finds its way to Ross Byrne again, who passes to Van der Fleer. He nearly gets away. He just couldn't quite get away. He didn't quite have the demographics to get away. But it was he tried to play the pass, but it's forward in the tackle who was being tackled when he played the pass. It was forward, so it's brought back for a scrum for Munster. From there, Munster kicked the ball off the scrum. Jimmy O'Brien claims the kick, eventually it's knocked on, so it's advantage to Munster. Again, they played through the advantage. I thought it was interesting that when they had advantage, they didn't just go for a Hail Mary or a kick or something to win a set piece, and it was probably because their set piece wasn't doing well. So you'd have to say that was probably the right decision for Munster to just play on and hope that Leinster give away another penalty. But Munster had it on halfway. This is a bit of kick tennis now, coming up to the 70-minute mark. Butler kicked it forward. Kick back into the hands of Osborne, and this is back and forward. Mike Haley did well actually to keep it in touch on one occasion for Munster. It was one of these was going out, and Munster would have lost a lot of territory, but he batted the ball back into play, I should say. Eventually, Munster tried to play through the middle. Ringrose does well again in defence, and it's penalty to Leinster for hands of the ruck. So from here, it's another penalty. From the penalty to Leinster, Ross Byrne kicks into the touch. I think right decision. May as well go for a bonus point now at this stage, or 2 scores clear. It doesn't go out, unfortunately. Now, crucially, I've mentioned Ross Byrne. He tends to be a confidence player. I don't think he put the head down when he made that mistake, and that's a really important thing. That's a benefit Jack Crowley has, that when he makes a mistake, he just gets up and does the next thing. I don't think this one had a bad effect on Ross Byrne's confidence, which is good to see, because, look, he's a mature enough player to not put the head down every time he makes a mistake, and mistakes happen in these games. So it's kicked out by Munster. Leinster have a line out. It's one at the front. We try to play through the middle. Break by McCarthy, Jimmy O'Brien nearly gets away, and again Leinster go through the phases, and eventually a Leinster pass is knocked on by a Munster hand. It's not an intentional knock on; he was trying to get the ball, so it's just a penalty, and Leinster kick on advantage, and it's touchdown over the line by Haley for a goal line dropout. It's back for it's back for a dropout to Munster. Dropout's reclaimed the dropout. Leinster were happy to go through the phases, just kind of grind them down, go through the middle. The handling was good enough this week that there wasn't any problem doing that. Ringrose nearly got away on the wing at one stage, and I think that's one thing about Ringrose. You have to say he's been happy to kind of play anywhere needed this season, and obviously his favourite position is centre, but he kind of pops up where he's needed. It was advantage Leinster on the line. We came back for advantage. Eventually, there's a sub. Scott Penny came on for Josh van der Fleer. He's the next player I'd like to see play with a chip on his shoulder, because, look, he's still very young. He still has plenty of time in his career, but probably just hasn't happened for him as much as people expected it to happen for him at this stage. Larmer also came on. So 74-minute, we tap and go. First phase, one phase to the line, and then second phase is carried over by Doris. It's easy enough in the end, and eventually well-deserved bonus point try. It's converted by Ross Byrne. I know we love a seat watch in the Munster social media community. A few Munster fans started leaving there, so they were standing up but not to fight. Just to point that one out. From there the game kind of fizzled out. But there was one more incident. It was Leinster had another scrum off the restart, and at this stage, I think Munster heads were just down. 5-metre line out for Leinster, goes through the hands. Good footwork by Larmer. Joe McCarty picks and hands off. We're just battering at the line, trying to get over. Eventually, Lee Barron gets over. So it's time off for a TMO review. Now, on this occasion, the ref says his on-field decision was no try. So we go up to the TMO, and there's nothing to overturn that decision. It's one of those, Barron got over the line, he reached over, you could see there was the TMO said there was a grounding, you just can't tell if it was over the line. So it's one of those, if the ref had said his on-field decision was a try, there would have been nothing to overturn that. So unfortunately, we just didn't really have the angles for it, but it was probably unlucky to miss out on the try. So this is where things kind of balance out from earlier. The third try shouldn't have been given, this try probably should. So, you were talking about a bonus point win anyway. But in fairness, right call by the TMO that he couldn't really give any evidence that it was overturned, but it probably was a try. It's goal line dropout for Munster for it's given as a knock on by Lee Barron basically. So from there, game just ends. Munster have a dropout. It's won by Leinster. A few phases. The clock's in red. Ref never called the clock in red. I never heard him call time, which is a strange one. Obviously, the game's not in the balance, so it didn't really make a difference. But strange one that he didn't mention. Dara showed good hands to Penny, who made a good break. The ball's won out by Munster. They kick forward. That was probably an odd decision if they were looking to get a try, because you're thinking either kick the ball out at this stage with the clock in red, or just don't give it back to Leinster and try get a try back. It's claimed by O'Brien, who kicks it out easy enough. So, yeah, full time, Leinster bonus point win. A couple of refereeing decisions. One, like, a couple of things went in Munster's favour earlier in the half. Bit of charitable refereeing calls. And then there's two tries, one that wasn't given, one that was given, that kind of cancel each other out. So I think Leinster deserved win in the end. They were pretty much on top for the whole of the second half. Certainly 30 minutes of the second half anyway. It never really looked like Munster were going to score after they got their one try of the game. So very good Interpro Christmas win.
Yeah, I mean, there might not have been a lot of stand up and fight from the fans towards the end, but the team did from the start of the second half. I mean, they needed to come out. They had the kickoff. They needed to come out and show something. And fair play, they did. They went after the restart. They won it back, and they kept us under pressure. I think maybe Munster were unlucky that they got that try when they did, because we had an advantage. There was another penalty advantage, which I was pretty sure would have been another card for Leinster for all the penalties there, but they got the try, so it didn't happen. So that kind of got them into the game. But then once Leinster settled back in, and I mean, that was all coming from that kickoff and the pressure there. But once the game began to level out, and we had a kickoff, and we had some time in their half, and we got our set pieces going again, like you say, Slimani had a great outing. I think he's done come on in leaps and bounds from what we expected from him from the first couple of games. I think our first impressions was that he was a penalty machine, but good at the scrums. But I think that I wondered, was he able to start? And he's proven me wrong. He is able. He's good to start a game. If it's a game where you really need to get control of the scrums, he can paint a picture. He knows how to show the referee that he's on top, and he's the one getting the advantage over his opposite numbers. So that's crucial. And he showed it again here. But like I say, Ringrose, his command of our defense, I think is the main overall thing. It's not even just, I mean, you see him shooting out and hitting players. That's just part of us. It's his overall scanning. I think a lot of times moves don't happen because they're wondering where he is. They're wondering where he in particular is going to come from. And I think that's what thwarts opposition attacks more than anything else. He's like the fulcrum of the defense. And he's crucial. The more minutes he plays, the better Leinster does. I think we said it in the preview, Kieran, that you were talking about Tom Ahern, his opposite number, and how well, or not Tom Ahern, Tom Farrell.
Tom Farrell,
yeah,
sorry.
Tom Farrell, how well he's done. But I think what their centres, Scannell and Farrell, were able to do was going to depend on whether or not Leinster got 80 minutes out of Henshaw and Ringrose. And because we had Osborne on the bench, it was only going to be injury that was going to break them up. And they were there for pretty much the whole time, and they were able to shut them down. And going forward for the Six Nations, I mean, you're looking at Easterby. The closer he gets to 400 minutes out of Gary Ringrose, the better his chances in the Six Nations. You know, he's in that kind of form, I think. But anyway, yeah, when we got that third try, I definitely wanted the bonus point. I wasn't that pushed of it going into that second half. I thought we just contained them, but when we got the third try, I definitely wanted the fourth. The third was lucky. I do think that was a penalty off the ground. Watching back, I don't even know why it wasn't even looked at, but there, I've said it just in case anyone thinks that we're disputing that somehow. But I do think we were good for the bonus point in the end. What you said about Ross Byrne was right. I think it was his pass out of a tackle, I think, that set up the space that got us to the line for that bonus point try. So that was a key moment there. But overall, like, you know, we got the job done in the second half. What did you make of it, Connor?
I think the second half was, I never felt, even after they scored and you're in the stand, and it's a funny place to go because they did not like the referee. They definitely didn't like me. I was quite vocal, and I didn't mind every now and then playing the panto villain, because you get people booing the ref. There was one where I think Kelleher has gone to try and get the ball and he's missed. So he's got his hands on the floor. So he just stays there. Like, I'm not going to interfere with anybody. I'm not doing that. And the screams are, he's off his feet. He's off his feet. And I'm like, he's not playing the ball and he's not interfering. Calm down. Everything's fine.
His real penalty was that he was wearing blue.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. They're not fans of us down there at all. And I think in that second half, though, just the control of the game, the right questions being asked of the ref, you see a lot of it throughout the game. Doris is always asking, can I check? What about? Did you? Can we? There's all these questions coming out the whole time. And look, the refs laid down the law early on with them as well and said, we're not having this all game. You can ask questions, but don't ask me about the TMO and don't ask me to overrule decisions I've already made, kind of attitude. And it's very positive as far as I can see. And that shows throughout that second half as well, because the way we played the game is to say, okay, the referee appreciated the picture we're painting. We shall continue to paint that picture. The referee knows we're making an effort with that. We're going to continue that. And yeah, as you say, we could absolutely have been pinged for another yellow card at the beginning of the second half. We could definitely have been done for Ryan's off the floor offload. But I think we just played a lot of things right. And I think it made us relatively unplayable against them. With what you're saying about Henshaw and Ringrose, they definitely outshone their counterparts. I think Munster are unfortunate that to come play in Leinster the week after you've been on a 4G pitch and have an absolute just huge number of injuries from that game alone. And Nankerville, I think, is the biggest one that made an impact for them, because I think if Nankerville and Farrell can build in the same way that Henshaw and Ringrose have, it's a very promising centre pairing for them. And it's the kind of thing you could build a team around that if you've got the players. Scannell is not the same standard for them, unfortunately, and there's a lot of that going on. Like, looking at that game, and particularly looking at that second half, fellas who suddenly became anonymous. I think Mike Haley had a decent game. I think Farrell was trying his best, and I think that Tom Ahern was head and shoulders above pretty much anyone else on the pitch for them. They've got decent players. The question is, how are they going to bring the rest of them up to that standard?
Absolutely. And but anyway, listen, we came away with the points in the end, and the final score was Munster 7, Leinster 28. Well, elsewhere in the rugby world, in the other Interpro this weekend, Connacht failed to build on their impressive second half of the Aviva last week as they disappointed their home fans in losing to Ulster. Meanwhile, Glasgow and the Sharks slipped further away from top spot as both lost their away derby matches. With 2 all-Welsh matches on New Year's Day plus Bulls v Lions delayed to February, they're left to complete round 9. This leaves Leinster ending 2024 with a 10-point lead at the top of the URC. And for those who follow us, the Irish Shield, Leinster actually have that wrapped up for a 4th season in a row. Meanwhile, in the second round of the Women's Celtic Challenge competition, the Clovers reversed their defeat last week with a 31-10 victory over the Wolfhounds at the Belfield Bowl on Saturday, a result that leaves the Welsh side, Gwalia Lightning, on top of the table with 2 wins out of 2. And we're getting reports that all the Gwalia players have been called in by the Welsh Rugby Union as consultants to their men's teams for 2025 so they can attempt to describe what being in first place is like. Now, going back to our feature match from Friday, after the match, Leo Cullen had this to say, quote, "We managed the yellow card period well, and although Munster came out for the second half all guns blazing, I thought the bench guys came on and steadied the ship well," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Chris McDonald said this on our Facebook page, quote, "I am not a Luke McGrath fan, but he was good tonight, credit where it's due. Munster's refusal to take points when they're on offer is just daft against a defence as good as Leinster's," end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? Well, we're going to do something a little bit different this week. We recorded our final thoughts segment, but I'm going to actually hold it back from the pod, and instead you'll find it on our YouTube channel. So go to our Harpin On Rugby YouTube channel for that final thoughts segment. Well, that's brilliant, lads. Many thanks again to Connor and Kieran for joining me. I hope to have you both back on the pod soon. Thanks, lads. Cheers, and have a happy New Year.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy New Year.
Good New Year, everybody.
As for our next batch of Harpin, well, with no Leinster or Ireland match next weekend, we'll be taking a break of sorts. There will be 80 plus columns posting on the Wednesdays, but our actual podcast won't return until our La Rochelle preview on January 10th. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, have a happy, safe New Year, everyone. Slán.